All right. So, Logan, glad to be here in this conversation today. I been looking forward to this for quite some time. So, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Great. And so, just to kind of give a little preface of where my mind's at, I'm going to kind of throw forward the topic of self awareness. Talked about it a little bit earlier. And so, I was just thinking back to childhood and some of the dysregulation that, some childhood trauma, both physical and otherwise, caused me. And then through years of addiction and kind of that disconnection with the body and all of these things, now in coming into awareness, in kind of the physical and mental and even spiritual realms, I'm noticing that a lot of benefit has come from self-awareness, and that's from conscious breathing and meditation, even routines, as we've talked about in some of our sessions. And so I'd like to ask, what is your experience with this and some of your views on self-awareness?
Well, first and foremost, I do not view self awareness as a single thing. There are multiple facets to it. There's the mental awareness, physical, emotional, situational, and spiritual awareness, in my opinion, at least in this kind of awareness area. And each one over the years, I've done my best to train in to up, whether that be meditation for the mental and spiritual, meditation for physical and mental, just the physical training and working out, which helps with some of the physical, multiple things over the years. But which let's I'd like to hear from you. Which is there one in particular you've been struggling with? Is there one you really just want to talk about because you've been doing really well with it?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, there's kind of both ends of that. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what you just said about how you've trained up these aspects. And, as you said that, it kind of came to mind for me. I would say, I cultivated, some of these things. And, I feel like for me, that's kind of almost a peeling away of, or getting rid of, blockages or patterns, habits, whatever. And so, yeah, could you maybe just talk a little bit more about that training aspect of things first?
Sure. I believe whether you are calling it cultivation or training, we're getting at the same thing here. And that is that all of these things are already there, right? They're never gone. It's not like you have to create them. We all have them on some level. Even if that level is not good, it's there on some level. And so in the beginning, if you've been, like you were saying, through things in life, which we all have by the time we're adults at least, then certainly there can be a peeling back of the layers, as you said, a removal of bad. But I firmly believe there's always gonna come a time where the majority of the journey becomes learning these things. And the way to do that is through actual practicing them, which I refer to as training when you do it on a habitual way.
Absolutely. And so, we've been talking quite a bit lately about kind of the physical context of these things of self-awareness because, as I've been kind of having my own personal struggles with that lately, and our meetings together have really been helpful in kind of bringing some self-awareness to my habits and routines around these things. So let's start there. Let's start with the physical aspect of things.
Well, for the physical aspect, I prefer to go the route of stretching and exercise. I think those are the quickest way to improve your physical awareness is by moving, right? And both of those allow you to do this and to feel what's moving in different ways, though. So it really allows you to learn what different things feel like in your body. And if done in the correct way, it allows you the time to really get into those feelings, to focus on them, which is an important part of all of these when it comes to improving them. There's an aspect of effort and focus that needs to be put on them.
Absolutely. And so we've also talked quite a bit about sleep routines and consistency both in sleep and meal planning and eating meals. So where would that fall in your opinion under these self-awareness categories that you brought up?
Honestly, the note taking and the sleep, I wouldn't put under any of them. They're kind of foundational to all of this, in my opinion. You want those in place so that when you go and attempt these things, you're in the right place to handle what you're going to be attempting. Because no attempt at anything is easy if you're, attempting something worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, and I appreciate that distinction because it is easy to kind of jump in a little too far without having the proper foundation. And so let's talk a little bit more about, I was interested when you brought up the emotional aspect especially, but you said emotional and situational. And so we'll start with emotional, but let's talk about both of those as well.
Emotional, I find myself, anyways, able to kind of perceive and continue to improve through one experience, right? We all have emotions. You go through things instead of just going through and being, subject, as it were, to these emotions. Take a minute and, think about them, witness them, maybe from a distance inside rather than up close and personal. This doesn't mean not feeling them. This doesn't mean pushing them away, shutting them down, anything like this. If anything, the end goal is to integrate your emotions. And that is kind of the end goal of emotional awareness, in my opinion. Or rather, I mean, this is kind of a chicken and egg thing. Like what comes first, the awareness or the ability to handle the emotions, you know? And I think they feed one another. Like so many things, the beginning will certainly be the hardest. So there's the experience, and then there's just educating yourself on the emotions, right? And I don't mean listening to other people tell you what is going to cause what emotions, because we're all different. We've been through different things are going to cause different emotions, but more of educating yourself on there's a lot more words that mean the different emotions than you would think. Like anger, most people would just refer to frustration, anger, irritation, all these as anger. But you can define them, at least for yourself, in subtly different ways so that when one comes along, being able to more precisely define it for yourself can be very helpful.
Yeah. And I think that would kind of lean into, I'm often reminded by people around me, difference between emotions and feelings, our interpretations of the emotions. And so that kind of sounds like it's leading into kind of that territory, exploring how I'm interpreting these different emotions and levels of feeling. Yeah, it's separate from everybody else.
Definitely.
And so now, what about situational awareness? Let's talk a little bit more about that. And I'll just say, from my perspective, unfortunately, this term kind of became a reality for me going into jail and prison and, rehab, some of these kind of controlled environments. And it's really important to be aware of your surroundings, the emotions of the people around you and what's going on in order to physically be safe. So, that kind of, I guess, appeared in me as somewhat of a trauma response, you could say, a response to a traumatic experience or environment, even if it was self-induced. Bring that mindset out here into the real world and kind of finding out how to balance it in my everyday life has been very beneficial to me, just in going out in public and seeing how people are reacting and acting, and also, mostly for me in my parenting relationship. to be able to kind of recognize how someone else is receiving what I'm saying and responding to what I'm saying, so I can gauge and pull back and really be aware of how that person is responding and feeling.
First of all, knowing what somebody else, or trying to put yourself in the shoes rather of somebody else, such as your daughter, when it comes to that, is actually empathy, which can certainly be helpful with situational awareness, but I wouldn't say they're the same thing. Being aware of the emotions of the people around you, what those emotions are, is definitely part of situational awareness, but not putting yourself in those shoes and trying to understand and all that, you know? Situational awareness is really just being aware of your surroundings and what's going on, right? So it's who's around you, where they are, what's happening, all of these things, the position of objects, exits, all these things could be lumped into situational awareness. The stuff that like military and movies and all this stuff makes out to be like a superpower. So, and I would agree with you. For myself, I've had a pretty high situational awareness most of my life, but I grew up in violence and around drugs. So, and then hit the streets where we met. So I've been in the exact same cause that you talked about was the same for me, honestly, but it was just a little earlier, in childhood. And yeah, I think once you take that to the outside world, when you've developed it in those high stress situations, you get a very high level of situational awareness that instead of building up, you kind of need to learn more how to control and bring down, because it can be overwhelming when it's not necessary.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to building situational awareness, I could certainly give some tips, but the biggest one is just pay attention, intentionally pay attention to just to begin with, the people around you. What does it look like they're feeling? And then try not, you don't even have to try and understand and build empathy first, but just try and adjust your behavior to appropriately interact with these people and the emotions that you think they're having. That's it. That's a good start. Let's just leave it at that for now.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is that's pretty deep. Yeah. Just having the ability to kind of gauge how people are feeling around you, it definitely changes the way that you can interact with them. Even just I've noticed, like, going into stores and stuff. Everybody tends to have this like standard, fake emotional greeting that they get. Oh, hey, how are you? You know what I mean? But to be like, oh, hey, that person looks like they're having a rough day.
With that exact example, I would say a good way to build situational awareness would be, don't wait for people to come up to you and talk to you before you start paying attention to them.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because you're right, and I agree. I've seen it for years. I watched people put on that fake mask. They put it on when they approach them. So if you're paying attention to the people around you, just in the average, you'll see what they're feeling. People don't walk around that often with masks on 24/7. We actually don't. Like, we might think we do, but when you're just browsing the shelves, let's say at the grocery store, you got your emotion on your face most likely. Until somebody goes, "Hey, so and so, how you doing?" And then you immediately put that mask on almost instinctually because we're taught to. But if you're paying attention before that interaction starts, then you'll see the real emotion of a person. And then when they put the mask on, you can still act as if as if they're actually feeling what they're actually feeling rather than what they want you to think they're feeling. Because most people don't actually want you to. They'll say they don't want you, and they behave as if they don't want you to know what they're feeling. But if you just treat them the way you know they're feeling, they'll appreciate it.
Exactly. Yeah.
They
Absolutely.
won't appreciate it if you bring it up in public.
Oh yeah, well, it's a learning experience. It's all a learning
Absolutely.
experience. Let's we could touch a little bit on the spiritual at the end, but I think I'm most interested to hear about the mental aspect, and this is because for myself, I've struggled most of my life with feeling almost out of control with what's going on in my head. I've gained some measure of control over that through different practices, like I spoke of earlier. But I always love hearing other other people's versions of how they deal with kind of that mental racing and wild thoughts, all of these things. So I'd love to hear kind of your view on the mind, self-awareness of the mind.
Absolutely. So, mental awareness, mental self awareness, if you will,
Mhm.
is other than spiritual, I would say it's probably the most obscure to try and really put your finger on and try to begin to really connect with. But for that very reason, I think it also kind of connects with all the others. So things such as any form of meditation, really, but in this example, let's say body scan meditation, where you're scanning from your toes, every part of your body, up slowly through the top of your head and then back down again. And you're analyzing each part. Does any part of it feel any certain way? All of this. That works both the physical and the mental connection, right? And a lot of I can't really think of any practices that I would say improve your mental awareness that don't also improve one of the others. It's a lot of different, I mean, pretty much any meditation practice is going to help you be more mentally aware. I think mental awareness, if you have a high level of mental awareness, it's easier to find the awareness with all these others, right? Because in a sense, mental, other than spiritual, mental is kind of the foundation of all of it. So to practice that, the biggest thing is meditation. Find a form of meditation. There are so many. I haven't tried nearly all of them. And most of them that I've tried, I've gotten something from, even if it's just the knowledge that it doesn't work, that's useful too. Other than that, it is just trying to stay present, which is mostly about intention, be intentionally where you are doing what you're doing. And the more you try to, because it's very frustrating at first and you're going to fail all the time. We humans do not have as long of an attention span as we'd like to fool ourselves into believing. But over time, it will improve. And when it improves, it will help everything else, like I said, pretty much improve.
Yeah, agree. And I realize I'm a little Trinitarian. That's my background coming through my religious background on my mind, body, spirit thing. But I've always kind of looked at them the same way, and I really appreciate your view. I've always seen them as interconnected as well. They all build off each other and feed off each other, and the more balanced they all are, the more balanced the whole being is. And so, yeah, definitely. And I know I feel kind of as you do, the spirituality is a very deep topic to get into, and so let's maybe just kind of touch on it and why it's important to include it in these other things here.
Well, as just humans, I don't think we do well without any purpose. It's something to strive for, some reason for being. And self-appointed purpose is not something most people really want to undertake, right? We like to believe that there are greater beings out there with special purposes for all of us. And spirituality is therefore kind of intrinsic to life. And I don't think, by my definition, I don't think anyone has none, right? Even if it's under the guise of religion, spiritual connection is important,
Yeah.
even if it's just to explore. So how you do that, what that's towards, all of that is up to you to decide. Who the hell am I to tell you? But I do think it's important.
And I would definitely agree with that. And I like how you linked it to purpose. And that's just such a elegant, simple description. Interesting. All right. That's pretty much the wind down in our talk today.